The Indiana Fever, a franchise known for its bold moves and calculated risks, recently made waves with a decision that has the basketball world buzzing. The team executed a move that left many shaking their heads in disbelief in one person, in particular, absolutely fuming, Caitlin Clark. The rising star from Iowa, whose passion and competitiveness on the court are as intense as her three-point shots, did not take kindly to the Fever's sudden change in direction. This shocking turn of events unfolded like a plot twist no one saw coming, leaving both fans and analysts debating the implications for the future of women's basketball. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. It all started with whispers in the league about the Fever's plans for the upcoming season. The team had been eyeing several high-profile prospects, including Clark, whose incredible talent and flair had made her a household name. Her ability to turn a game on its head with her shooting, combined with a fiery attitude, had put her at the top of every draft board. The thought of Clark donning the Indiana jersey had fans imagining her transforming the team into a powerhouse. The Fever seemed to be the perfect fit for the ambitious guard, until they weren't. In a surprising move that left even the most seasoned analysts stunned, the Indiana Fever passed on Caitlin Clark, opting to make a completely different choice in the draft. The decision wasn't just unexpected, it was almost unfathomable. Everyone had anticipated that Clark would be the crown jewel of the Fever's future, the missing piece to elevate them from a struggling team to serious contenders. But instead, Indiana took a different route, one that threw a wrench in Clark's plans and set her competitive fire ablaze. Clark's reaction was as fierce as her game. Known for her intensity and unfiltered emotions on the court, she didn't hide her feelings about the snub. Her frustration seemed almost palpable, like steam rising off a boiling kettle. There was no diplomatic smile or carefully crafted statement. Instead, she gave the kind of look that could make a referee's whistle freeze mid-blow. Clark's body language said it all: betrayal, disbelief, and an unmistakable determination to prove a point. For those who have followed Clark's career, this kind of response wasn't out of character. She's never been one to back down from a challenge, and this moment was no exception. Clark has built her career on proving doubters wrong, on turning every slight into fuel for her fire. To see her seething with frustration was like watching a storm gather force. It was intense, but you knew it was just the beginning of something bigger. Indiana's decision sent ripples through the entire basketball community. Fans took to social media in a frenzy, questioning the logic behind passing up on one of the most electrifying players to come out of college in years. The Fever's front office tried to calm the storm by explaining their vision for the team's future, emphasizing their long-term strategy. They spoke about team chemistry, building for the future, and focusing on players who fit into their specific game plan. But the words fell hollow to those who had already imagined Clark lighting up the Indiana skyline with her dazzling play. From the outside, it might seem like the Fever simply chose to go in a different direction, but for Clark, this was personal. The move felt like a slight, a challenge to her abilities, and an underestimation of her potential. For someone as fiercely competitive as Clark, that's all the motivation she needed to turn her focus up another notch. She's the type of player who thrives on adversity, and the Indiana Fever just handed her a reason to play with a chip on her shoulder the size of a championship trophy. The implications of Indiana's decision could be far-reaching. For one, it might have created a future rivalry between Clark and the Fever that could electrify the league for years to come. Clark has always played her best when she has something to prove, and now the Fever has inadvertently placed a target on their back. Every matchup between Indiana and whichever team Clark lands on will be charged with extra intensity, the kind that turns regular season games into can't-miss events. In some ways, the Fever's move also shifts the balance of power in the league. By passing on Clark, they've left a talent of her caliber available to other teams, potentially reshaping the landscape of the WNBA. Teams that might not have even considered her a possibility now have a chance to integrate her game-changing skills into their lineup. It's like dropping a game-winning lottery ticket and watching someone else pick it up. Behind the scenes, the dynamics in the Fever's locker room must be fascinating to observe. The players, some of whom were undoubtedly excited at the prospect of playing alongside Clark, are now left to rally around a different vision. Leadership within the team will be tested, as they'll have to buy into the new strategy and focus on executing a plan that's already under heavy scrutiny. There's a sense that every move the Fever make from now on will be under a microscope, each decision weighed against the one they didn't make, choosing Caitlin Clark. One has to wonder about the conversations that took place leading up to the decision. Did the Fever's management sit around a table, look at all the available talent, and genuinely believe that their chosen path was the best option? Or was there a split in opinions, a tug-of-war between the scouts who believed in Clark's undeniable talent and those who were fixated on a different vision? The boardroom debates must have been intense, with arguments as sharp as Clark's crossovers. While the Fever's gamble is bold, it's also fraught with risk. The WNBA is a league where one transformative player can change a franchise's fortunes almost overnight. By passing on Clark, Indiana has put its faith in a longer-term rebuild, betting that their alternative choice will eventually pay dividends. But in doing so, they've also lit a fire under one of the most competitive players in the sport, and that could come back to haunt them sooner than they'd like. Clark's competitive drive has always been one of her defining traits. She's the kind of player who talks trash with a smile, who isn't afraid to let opponents know when they've made a mistake, and who seems to get stronger the more pressure is applied. The Fever's decision has now added a new layer to her narrative, another chapter in the story of a player who has made a career out of turning obstacles into opportunities. The stage is set for an epic showdown whenever Clark faces off against Indiana in the future. You can almost see the smirk on her face as she lines up a shot, the intensity in her eyes as she looks over at the Fever's bench. Every three-pointer, every no-look pass, every moment of brilliance on the court will carry a little extra meaning. A reminder of what could have been and a message to the team that passed her by. Indiana's move has also sparked a broader conversation about the team's decision-making process and their vision for the future. The Fever have long been searching for a way to climb back to the top of the league, to recapture the glory they once held. In their quest for resurgence, they've opted for a strategy that doesn't include the sure thing that Caitlin Clark represents. Instead, they are betting on potential, on the idea that their chosen path will eventually lead to something bigger than one player's star power. There's a certain irony in the way things have unfolded. The Fever's decision, intended to signal a bold new direction, has instead placed them squarely in the spotlight for reasons they probably didn't anticipate. Instead of headlines celebrating a new era in Indiana basketball, they're facing questions and criticisms from every corner. And while they might have a plan that makes sense in the long term, in the short term, they become the team that let Caitlin Clark get away. The fallout from this move will likely be felt for years. For Clark, it's just another twist in a career that has already seen its fair share of highs and lows. Her journey to the top is far from over, and if anything, the Fever's decision has only added more fuel to her already roaring fire. For the Fever, the pressure is on to prove that their decision wasn't a mistake, to show that they see something the rest of the world doesn't. As the dust settles on the Indiana Fever's decision to pass on Caitlin Clark, the reverberations of this bold move continue to shake the basketball world. Analysts, fans, and even some players have all weighed in, speculating on the deeper motivations behind Indiana's choice. The implications go beyond just one player's career path. They hint at a shift in the strategic landscape of the entire league. It's not just that Clark didn't get picked. It's the message that Indiana sent by looking past her, a message that has left many wondering about the true direction of the franchise. Digging deeper into the Fever's decision-making process reveals the complex considerations a team faces when building for the future. On the surface, selecting Clark seemed like the obvious choice, given her talent and ability to generate buzz around the franchise. But Indiana's move suggests they're playing a different game, perhaps one that focuses more on cohesion and long-term planning rather than immediate star power. It's as if they've opted to plant seeds they believe will blossom over time, rather than grabbing the ready-made flower everyone else was reaching for. This approach to team building isn't without precedent. There have been instances in sports history where franchises took unconventional paths, avoiding the obvious superstar to focus on a broader vision. The gamble, of course, is that such a strategy requires patience and a steadfast belief in the players they'd chosen to invest in. But the WNBA, like any professional sports league, is a results-driven business, and patience can often wear thin when fans and stakeholders are hungry for wins. The Fever's front office must now walk a tightrope, balancing their calculated risks with the need to prove that their strategy is more than just wishful thinking. Indiana's decision might also speak to a philosophy that values versatility over singular greatness. In basketball, a well-rounded team with diverse skill sets can often outplay a squad built around one dominant star. By passing on Clark, the Fever might be betting that a more balanced roster will pay off in the long run, believing that a symphony of talents will outperform the solo act. If their gamble pays off, it could set a new trend in how NBA teams approach building their lineups, encouraging others to look beyond the headline-grabbing stars in favor of cultivating depth and adaptability. The shockwaves of this decision have also affected Clark's future in unexpected ways. While her initial frustration was evident, Clark has since channeled her energy into preparing for the next stage of her career with an intensity that borders on obsession. It's as if the Fever's snub has unlocked a new level of focus within her, a drive to dominate on a scale that even her most ardent supporters hadn't seen before. She's been doubling down on her training, perfecting her already lethal shooting range, and refining the mental toughness that makes her such a formidable competitor. Off the court, Clark's demeanor has shifted too. Known for her confident swagger and playful trash talk, she now carries a slightly different air, a kind of quiet determination that suggests she's already plotting her revenge. It's not so much that she's changed her personality, but that she's sharpening it, like a knife being honed for battle. This isn't just about proving the Fever wrong. It's about establishing herself as the kind of player who can turn rejection into a stepping stone for greatness. As she gears up to enter the league, Clark's approach to the game seems to have grown even more strategic. She's not just relying on her natural talent. She's studying opponents with the meticulous attention of a chess grandmaster. Every game she watches, every play she analyzes, is now seen through the lens of this slide from the Fever. She's preparing not just to compete, but to dismantle defenses with a precision that leaves no room for doubt. Her mission is clear: make every team that passed on her, particularly Indiana, regret the day they underestimated her. From a broader perspective, Clark's snub has also become a talking point in discussions about how women's basketball is evolving. Players like Clark, with their combination of skill, charisma, and marketability, are seen as the future of the sport, a future where individual stars can bring more visibility and excitement to the league. By not picking her, Indiana inadvertently set off a debate about the role of star power in the WNBA and whether teams should prioritize immediate impact players to grow the league's profile or build methodically for sustainable success. Some fans argue that the Fever's move shows a lack of faith in the current trend of leaning on superstars to elevate the game's popularity. The WNBA has long been pushing for greater recognition, and players like Clark have the kind of crossover appeal that can draw in casual viewers. By turning away from that potential boost, Indiana has positioned itself as something of a contrarian, focused more on their own blueprint than the league's larger narrative of expanding through marquee talents. This decision puts them at odds with the idea that individual brilliance is the key to capturing the audience's imagination. However, Indiana's choice could also be seen as a statement about valuing the intangibles: chemistry, work ethic, and the less glamorous aspects of basketball that often go unnoticed. Maybe they saw something in Clark that didn't align with their internal culture or the environment they're trying to build. It's a reminder that despite her undeniable talent, no player is a perfect fit for every team. Each franchise has its own ethos, its own way of doing things, and sometimes even the most gifted athlete doesn't quite match up with what a team is looking for. The Fever's strategy then could be likened to playing the long game in poker. They're willing to sacrifice short-term wins for a shot at the jackpot later on. It's a calculated risk that could either cement them as visionaries if it works out or leave them haunted by the decision if Clark ascends to superstardom elsewhere. The league's history is littered with teams that passed on future Hall of Famers, only to watch those players flourish on rival squads. Indiana has now staked its claim in this high-stakes gamble, hoping not to become another cautionary tale. Meanwhile, the buzz surrounding Caitlin Clark has only intensified. Her name has become synonymous with the word prodigy, and every team that still has a chance to draft her is carefully weighing their options. Her camp is flooded with calls from franchises looking to gauge her interest, to see if she would be the missing ingredient in their pursuit of a title. Clark's future is now a focal point of discussion in sports media, and the anticipation of where she'll land has turned into a subplot more compelling than any playoff race. Indiana Fever's decision has also reignited the age-old debate of heart versus strategy. For fans who value passion and the love of the game, watching Clark play is like witnessing raw emotion transformed into pure athleticism. Her competitive spirit is infectious, and her ability to inspire her teammates is often as valuable as her scoring prowess. To pass on that kind of emotional leader takes a level of cold calculation that feels almost uncharacteristic for a team looking to capture the hearts of its fans. The Fever have a reputation to uphold, a legacy that they are clearly trying to shape anew. Their gamble hints at a desire to move away from the expected and create a unique narrative for their team. They want to build something lasting, something that doesn't rely on one player's shooting hand to dictate the outcome of every game. It's a noble endeavor, but one that comes with a hefty price. Should their plan falter, they'll forever be the franchise that had the chance to grab a generational talent and said, "No, thanks." On the other side, Clark's approach is all about embracing her role as a disruptor. She's not interested in fitting into a pre-existing mold or playing a supporting role. She wants to be the force that other teams have to reckon with, the player that changes the course of a franchise's history. Clark's ambitions don't just stop at winning games. She's aiming to reshape the narrative of what it means to be a superstar in the WNBA. And Indiana's snub has only solidified her resolve to take over the league on her terms. As the upcoming season approaches, all eyes will be on Clark and the Indiana Fever, albeit for very different reasons. For Clark, the journey is now fueled by a desire to make Indiana eat their words, or rather, their draft decision. Every highlight reel she produces, every stat line she fills, will serve as a testament to the player they could have had. She's already become a symbol of what happens when passion meets potential, and now she's on a mission to redefine what a rookie season can look like. Indiana, on the other hand, will face the difficult task of proving that their move was not a mistake, but a stroke of genius. They'll need to show that their vision was more than just a refusal to follow the crowd, that their commitment to building a cohesive team will pay off in wins, and not just in theoretical arguments about team chemistry. It's a lot to have asked of any franchise, especially one that now sits in the crosshairs of public scrutiny. The stakes are high, not just for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, but for the future of the WNBA itself. This saga has put a spotlight on the league's evolving dynamics, the tension between individual brilliance and collective strategy. It's a clash of philosophies that could very well influence how future teams approach their draft strategies and roster construction. The Fever's choice may seem like just one decision in the grand scheme, but its ripples could reshape the way franchises think about building for success in a rapidly growing league. Caitlin Clark's mindset has evolved into something almost warrior-like, a relentless pursuit of not just excellence but domination. Her approach is no longer just about playing the game. It's about mastering every aspect of it. She's refining her footwork, drilling her defensive strategies, and expanding her playmaking arsenal to ensure that she doesn't just compete in the league, she controls it. The Fever's decision has essentially become the spark that lit a fire in her, transforming her from a talented player into a force of nature poised to storm through the WNBA with a vengeance. On Indiana's end, their focus has clearly shifted to cultivating a collective identity that transcends any single superstar. They're betting on the notion that basketball is a game won by teams, not individuals. Their choice signals a dedication to building an unbreakable unit, where every player understands their role and contributes to the whole. It's a belief that the sum of their parts will outshine the brilliance of any one piece, even if that piece is as dazzling as Caitlin Clark. What the Fever have done, intentionally or not, is challenge the conventional wisdom that places individual talent above all else. Their gamble suggests a belief that greatness can be engineered through systems, through synergy, rather than just sheer skill. If they succeed, it can mark a turning point in how the WNBA, and even the broader basketball world, evaluates talent and team construction. It's a bold attempt to redefine what it means to build a champion, steering away from star-centric strategies that have dominated headlines for decades. As the season nears, the basketball world waits in anticipation, not just to see where Clark ends up, but to see if the Fever's grand experiment will pay off. Will Caitlin Clark rise as the league's next megastar, the one that got away? Or will Indiana's blueprint prove them to be ahead of the curve, architects of a new era in team dynamics? One thing is certain, this is not just a story about a draft decision. It's the beginning of a rivalry, a clash of ideologies, and perhaps the most intriguing drama the WNBA has seen in years. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.